The galaxy had always considered itself a realm of order. From the luminous core of the Andromeda Reach to the icy fringes of the Solari Expanse, every celestial body had been meticulously catalogued. The Galactic Council prided itself on precision. It was their sacred duty to map every planet, every asteroid belt, every moon, and every orbiting fragment of matter that drifted in the infinite void. Across countless civilizations, species relied on the Council's records as a foundation for trade, exploration, diplomacy, and war. Deviations from the charts were almost unheard of, and when they occurred, they were treated with reverence, caution, and sometimes fear. After all, a single miscalculation in gravitational dynamics could doom entire fleets or send colonies plummeting into the cold vacuum of space. And yet, despite their arrogance, their knowledge, and their technologies that spanned millennia, the Council had made a declaration so shocking it shook the galaxy to its very core. In the remote Kithara system, 18 moons existed, or rather, they were said to exist, but the Council pronounced them physically impossible. Their mass, their orbital configurations, their chemical composition, even the faint gravitational tug they exerted on the system's primary star, everything about these moons violated the fundamental laws of physics. Calculations were double-checked, triple-checked, and cross-referenced against every known model of planetary dynamics. The verdict was unanimous and inescapable. Any intelligent life attempting to set foot on these moons would be committing an act of suicidal futility. These moons could not exist. The very idea of life flourishing on them was laughable. News of the Council's declaration spread like wildfire. Star systems buzzed with discussion. Astrophysicists debated the anomaly with fervor, sending streams of data and simulations across interstellar networks. Diplomats held emergency sessions, attempting to draft joint statements of caution, while military fleets were dispatched not to colonize, but to observe, to confirm, to document the impossibility. For years, probes returned data that only confirmed what the Council had predicted: the moons should not exist. Their supposed locations should be empty, barren stretches of space, voids that offered no gravity, no atmosphere, and no potential for life. And yet, faint energy readings, faint gravitational anomalies, and intermittent communications hinted at something else. Something alive, something moving, where physics said nothing should be. It was at this moment, amidst the tremors of disbelief and debate, that humans entered the story. By galactic standards, humans were a young, impulsive, and sometimes reckless species. They were still considered an anomaly by the established civilizations who viewed them as brash, stubborn, and dangerously creative. While most advanced races would have paused, studied, and petitioned the Council for permission to investigate, humans acted with a singular, almost defiant audacity. Survey vessels, sleek and modest by galactic standards, slipped quietly through hyperspace corridors to reach Kithara. No grand announcements, no bureaucratic clearance, no endless debates. Humans simply went. When the first reports began to trickle back from these survey missions, the galaxy reacted with a mix of disbelief and incredulity. The readings did not match predictions. The moons existed, each one physically real, orbiting the system's primary star with a precision that should have been impossible. Their surfaces emitted faint electromagnetic pulses, subtle signatures that hinted at a complexity beyond mere rock and ice. One moon, slightly smaller than Cathara's second-largest planet, reflected starlight in a way that seemed almost deliberate, as if polished by some intelligent hand or natural process beyond the comprehension of the galaxy's most esteemed scientists. Another pulsed with faint, rhythmic energy, hinting at an almost living presence, a heartbeat woven into the very crust of the moon. And yet, every calculation, every law, every model, every theorem had said these moons could not exist, could not orbit in such harmony, and could not sustain any form of structure, let alone life. Humans, of course, did not hesitate. Where others saw impossible numbers and fatal errors in physics, humans saw a challenge. Where the galaxy saw death, they saw opportunity. They began sending manned missions, carefully constructed with technologies that other species considered crude, yet which humans wielded with uncanny effectiveness. The missions landed on the moon's surfaces, navigating gravitational anomalies, unpredictable magnetic fields, and atmospheric variations that should have torn them apart. Humans adapted, improvised, and survived, proving that the Council's understanding of reality was, at the very least, incomplete. By the time word spread across the galaxy that humans were setting up permanent outposts on the Cathara moons, the initial shock had given way to astonishment and, in some quarters, panic. Scholars scrambled to reconcile their physics with the evidence. Engineers marveled at the human ingenuity that allowed them to survive conditions that should have been fatal. Diplomats whispered about the audacity of a species that ignored council decrees and redefined the boundaries of possibility with nothing but grit, curiosity, and stubborn determination. The Cathara system, once a footnote in galactic charts, became a crucible of human audacity. Each of the 18 moons, once declared non-existent, became a testing ground for what humans could achieve. And the galaxy, for all its advanced knowledge, was forced to watch as a species it barely understood began to rewrite the rules not through diplomacy, not through treaties, but through sheer, undeniable action. The impossible moons were real, and humans were moving there. And in that simple, defiant act, they sent a message that would echo across the stars for generations. The laws of the galaxy were suggestions, not limits. And humans would never be bound by what others claimed was impossible. When the first human crew arrived in the Cathara system, the galaxy held its collective breath. Long-range sensors from distant civilizations barely captured the details of what lay before them. Reports from the human survey vessels painted a picture so astonishing that even the most skeptical scholars struggled to comprehend it. The moons were not just real, they were breathtaking, impossible marvels of nature, each defying the very rules that governed the cosmos. The crew of the Endeavour, the flagship of humanity's exploratory fleet, orbited the largest of the moons. It glimmered under the light of Cathara's 3 suns, its surface refracting beams of sunlight like a colossal, multifaceted gem. Mountains rose like jagged shards of crystal, and rivers of liquid metal flowed across valleys carved from glittering stone. Another moon, smaller yet no less spectacular, pulsed with faint, rhythmic energy that seemed almost alive, an unmistakable heartbeat woven into the crust. Clouds of luminescent particles drifted lazily through its thin atmosphere, dancing like auroras across the sky. The humans recorded every detail, their excitement palpable even through encrypted transmissions that reached the farthest edges of the galaxy. Unlike most civilizations, humans did not hesitate with caution, paralyzed by fear or over-analysis. They named each moon without ceremony, borrowing from Earth's myths, legends, and heroes. Lyra, Kyle, Theros, Eos, names that carried history, memory, and courage. The act of naming was, for humans, a declaration of intent. These moons were no longer abstract anomalies. They were territories to explore, challenge, and ultimately to inhabit. Landing was a perilous task. The moon's gravitational patterns fluctuated unpredictably, sometimes pulling vessels toward one region of the surface with terrifying force before abruptly weakening. Magnetic storms surged across metallic plains, threatening to fry unshielded instruments and sensors. Yet humans adapted. They reprogrammed navigation algorithms on the fly, developed magnetic dampeners to counter the storms, and designed landing thrusters capable of adjusting to sudden gravitational spikes. When other species would have retreated, humans pressed forward, confident in their ingenuity and resilience. Stepping onto the surface of Lyra, Commander Tessaval, the mission leader, felt a rush of exhilaration that no human before her had experienced. The ground beneath her feet shimmered faintly, as though acknowledging her presence. Crystalline formations reflected the sun's light in dazzling patterns, and the faint hum of energy from the moon's core thrummed in rhythm with her heartbeat. "It's alive," she whispered over the comlink, not to her crew, but to the universe itself. Her words were not metaphor. In the alien silence, she could feel the energy that pulsed through the moon, ancient and patient, untouched by the laws of physics as the galaxy knew them. The humans immediately began establishing base camps, improvising shelters that could withstand both the physical strain of irregular gravity and the volatile energy surges. Instruments were deployed to study the moon's unique magnetic fields, geological compositions, and atmospheric anomalies. Each observation seemed to challenge the very foundations of the Council's declarations. Data packets transmitted back to Earth and human colonies in nearby systems overflowed with paradoxes, mountains that should have collapsed under their own weight, rivers of molten metals flowing without dispersing, energy pulses synchronized with gravitational shifts. Every anomaly confirmed what humans had always known. Boundaries were only as rigid as one allowed them to be. Beyond the science, humans thrived because of their unrelenting curiosity. Teams ventured into alien forests that glowed in surreal colors, cataloging flora and fauna that defied earthly logic. Some plants seemed semi-sentient, moving subtly when approached, adjusting their bioluminescence as if communicating in a language humans had yet to decipher. Others produced compounds that could power energy cells far beyond what the human fleet's reactors had anticipated. Each discovery fueled the next expedition, and soon, the moons were no longer mere destinations. They were challenges, puzzles to be solved, and rewards to be claimed. The galaxy watched in a mix of disbelief and awe. Official broadcasts from distant council worlds could barely contain their astonishment as images of humans walking across impossible surfaces, erecting structures, and surviving conditions previously deemed fatal reached their archives. Scientists pored over the data, recalculating gravitational constants and material densities, only to find the humans' observations were consistent, repeatable, and accurate. And humans, true to form, did not explain themselves. They simply acted, adapting, thriving, and leaving the galaxy scrambling to catch up. As the Endeavor prepared to lift off from Lyra, Commander Vol looked out over the horizon, where two suns met in the sky, casting fractured shadows across the crystalline plains. "We came because they said we couldn't," she said softly, almost to herself. "We stayed because we could." The words were simple, but they carried weight. For the first time, a species had not only disproved the Council's predictions, they had redefined what was possible. And so, where other civilizations saw a dead system of impossibilities, humans saw opportunity. Where the galaxy expected hesitation and retreat, humans brought resolve and action. The 18 moons of the Kythera system, long considered a cosmic paradox, had found their first inhabitants, and those inhabitants were human. Humans did not arrive merely to observe, they came to stay. Where other species might have sent probes, conducted surveys, or debated endlessly in bureaucratic chambers, humans immediately set to work building permanent structures. Their colonies were not just shelters, they were symbols of audacity. On Lyra, the largest and most volatile moon, engineers anchored towering research stations into crystalline cliffs, using adaptive magnetic stabilizers to counter unpredictable gravitational shifts. On Kyle, whose surface was a shifting mosaic of molten metals and metallic planes, humans constructed energy dampening domes that absorbed the lethal heat and redirected it into power grids for the colony. On Theros, with its faintly alive atmosphere, botanists and biologists established experimental farms, cultivating alien flora whose bioluminescent properties could illuminate entire habitats without artificial lighting. The challenges were staggering. Storms of charged plasma swept across the moons with destructive force. Magnetic surges scrambled instruments, and gravity could fluctuate by several percent in the blink of an eye. Each of these anomalies would have doomed any other species, but humans adapted, improvised, and thrived. Teams of engineers designed dynamic stabilizers that adjusted in real time to sudden gravitational shifts. Farmers and botanists learned to cultivate plants that grew in rhythmic harmony with the moon's energy pulses, creating bioluminescent fields that served both as food sources and power conduits. Every obstacle became a problem to solve, every impossibility a puzzle to overcome. Mining operations pushed the boundaries of known engineering. On Eos, the metallic rivers contained rare elements that defied conventional extraction techniques. Yet humans developed magnetic siphons and plasma-resistant drilling systems that harvested these materials efficiently. Entire moons' worth of resources were converted into raw materials for colony expansion, from hull reinforcements for orbital stations to energy cores capable of powering settlements for decades. While other species looked at Kythera and saw a system they had been told was impossible, humans saw a treasure trove of opportunity. The speed of colonization astonished the galaxy. Within just a few years, humans had established thriving settlements on 7 of the 18 moons. 11 additional moons had smaller outposts, research stations, and orbital docks, each connected by human-engineered transport networks that defied the Council's previous understanding of stable orbital dynamics. The settlements were alive with activity. Children born in the orbital stations gazed at alien skies with wonder. Scientists debated the mysteries of moons that pulsed with near-living energy, and engineers continually refined their equipment, making survival more efficient and more secure. The psychological aspect of human colonization was equally remarkable. Humans did not simply survive, they thrived socially, intellectually, and emotionally. They built communities, developed culture, and maintained communication networks that allowed each moon to function as a part of a greater system. Artisans painted murals that captured the shifting colors of alien skies. Musicians used fluctuating energy pulses as instruments, composing symphonies that resonated with the moons themselves. Diplomats from neighboring star systems came to observe, often bewildered by the humans' ability to combine science, art, and survival into one harmonious existence. Perhaps most astonishing of all was the humans' relationship with the moons themselves. They treated each anomaly not as a threat, but as a partner. Magnetic storms were mapped and anticipated rather than feared. The bioluminescent flora on Theros became both food and communication medium, creating living networks that humans learned to interpret. Even the moon's unpredictable orbits were harnessed to optimize energy collection and travel schedules. The humans' approach was not domination, but collaboration. They worked with the moons, not against them. News of these feats spread across the galaxy, causing shockwaves in scientific, political, and cultural circles. Scholars struggled to reconcile the data with centuries of accepted theory. The Council, which had long prided itself on absolute authority, faced embarrassment and incredulity as human colonies thrived where their calculations had declared death. Meanwhile, the humans themselves remained largely unconcerned with recognition or approval. Their focus was on survival, exploration, and the sheer joy of accomplishing what others deemed impossible. In essence, the humans had not only colonized the impossible moons, they had transformed them into living laboratories, proving grounds and homes. Each moon became a testament to human creativity, resilience, and audacity. The Kythera system, once considered a cosmic anomaly, had become a crucible where humans honed their ingenuity and redefined the limits of what a species could achieve. Where others saw danger and impossibility, humans saw challenge and opportunity. Where the galaxy expected hesitation and retreat, humans demonstrated determination and mastery. And as orbital stations rose, energy fields stabilized, and settlements thrived, one undeniable truth became clear to all who observed from afar. The 18 moons, once declared physically impossible, had been conquered not by force or technology alone, but by the indomitable human spirit. The Kythera system, once dismissed as a cosmic anomaly, became a spectacle that no civilization could ignore. From the remote observation decks of the Envari Core to the bustling spaceports of the Orion Expanse, officials, scientists, and civilians alike followed humanity's progress with a mixture of awe and disbelief. Every new report from the moons challenged centuries of established knowledge. Where scholars had once assumed the laws of physics were absolute, humans now demonstrated that creativity, adaptability, and determination could bend the rules in ways no equation could predict. It wasn't just the technology that drew attention, it was the human spirit behind it. Other species, who relied on caution, careful calculations, and council oversight, watched as humans faced calamities and anomalies head-on. A sudden magnetic storm that could have destroyed an entire orbital station became an opportunity for innovation. Humans deployed adaptive shielding and recalibrated energy conduits on the fly, stabilizing structures that the galaxy had assumed would be obliterated. When a moon's gravity shifted unexpectedly, threatening to throw settlers into the void, humans engineered stabilization grids and magnetic anchor points, demonstrating not only technical skill, but remarkable courage. This audacity began to reshape perceptions. Scientists who had once written humans off as reckless newcomers now found themselves studying their methods, attempting to reverse engineer their successes. Diplomats approached human colonies, not with suspicion, but with curiosity, eager to learn how a species so young in galactic terms could accomplish what others considered impossible. The Kythera moons became centers of interstellar education, attracting scholars, engineers, and explorers from countless systems, all hoping to witness firsthand the techniques humans employed to survive, adapt, and flourish in a place no one else dared. The cultural impact was just as profound. The moons became laboratories not only for science, but for creativity, art, and philosophy. Humans embraced the alien landscapes as sources of inspiration. Music was composed using the resonant energy pulses of the moon's cores. Sculptures incorporated crystalline formations and metallic rivers, creating works of art that could not exist anywhere else in the galaxy. Children born on the moons learned to navigate gravity anomalies as naturally as walking on Earth, and their education combined rigorous scientific training with lessons in creativity, resilience, and problem-solving. Even the Galactic Council could no longer ignore the implications. Their once unquestioned authority was being quietly challenged by the humans' achievements. For decades, the Council had dictated what was possible and impossible, yet here was a species living proof that limits were suggestions, not absolutes. Meetings were convened and reports filed, but no law, no decree, no scientific principle could halt the humans' momentum. Slowly, the galaxy began to realize that humans were not merely participants in the cosmos, they were pioneers, redefining its very rules. Humanity's collaboration with the moons themselves became legendary. Unlike other species, humans did not attempt to dominate or extract blindly. They observed the moon's behaviors, learned to anticipate their energy pulses, and harmonized their settlements with the moon's natural rhythms. On Eos, floating bioluminescent farms synchronized with the moon's electromagnetic fields, producing crops and energy simultaneously. On Theros, humans mapped the moon's shifting surface patterns to create adaptive transport networks that could move seamlessly with terrain changes. Where others saw threats, humans saw allies, working in tandem with the living moons to turn impossibility into prosperity. The ripple effects extended far beyond Cathara. Neighboring systems began to reconsider the assumptions they had long held about physics, survival, and exploration. Young civilizations were inspired by the human success, embracing risk and innovation rather than fearing failure. Military fleets, once rigid in protocol, studied human problem-solving for potential strategic advantage. Scientists debated the very definitions of what was possible, realizing that humanity had rewritten the galaxy's playbook simply by living, thinking, and acting differently. And yet, for all their achievements, humans remained unapologetically human. They celebrated victories with laughter and music. They comforted failures with persistence and ingenuity. They treated each moon not as a prize to be claimed, but as a partner in a grand experiment of survival and creativity. In doing so, they proved a truth that no council, scholar, or politician could dispute: when a species refuses to accept limits, when it dares to act where others hesitate, it transforms not just itself, but the universe around it. In the vast emptiness of space, amid 18 moons that should not exist, humans had created a beacon. The Cathara system was no longer a footnote in galactic charts. It was a testament to resilience, ingenuity, and the indomitable human spirit. Where other species saw risk, humans saw challenge. Where others saw impossibility, humans built civilizations. And in doing so, they changed the galaxy forever, leaving a legacy that would endure long after the first settlers' footprints faded from the crystalline surfaces of Lyra, Kyle, Theros, and the moons beyond. Even as the Kythera moons flourished under human ingenuity, the galaxy continued to watch in awe. The 18 moons, once declared physically impossible, had become living testaments to the audacity, creativity, and resilience of a single species. For the humans themselves, it was not just survival or conquest, it was a declaration of identity. Every dome, every research station, every bioluminescent farm was a statement. Humans thrived not because the universe allowed it, but because they refused to be constrained by the impossible. The children born under the alien skies of Lyra and Kyle grew up understanding the beauty of challenge. They learned to navigate shifting gravitational fields as naturally as walking on solid ground. They marveled at crystalline rivers, molten metal flows, and forests that glowed like living stars. These children did not fear the unknown, they embraced it. Their education combined rigorous science, practical engineering, and imaginative problem-solving, producing a generation that viewed limits as invitations to explore rather than walls to fear. On Eos, bioluminescent farms stretched across vast plains, their energy harmonized with the moon's natural pulses. On Thuros, research stations floated in the thin atmosphere, studying flora that communicated in patterns of light. On every moon, human culture thrived. Music echoed the rhythm of energy surges. Art mirrored the alien landscapes, and stories of the first explorers' courage became legends told and retold. Life on the moons was not merely possible, it was extraordinary. Across the galaxy, the human presence began to challenge long-held assumptions. Scholars and engineers from distant civilizations studied human techniques, trying to comprehend how a species so young in galactic terms could adapt, survive, and thrive, where others had been told death awaited. Military strategists debated the humans' resilience, diplomats observed their social cohesion, and philosophers questioned what it meant to truly know the limits of possibility. Humanity had become a force not through domination or conquest, but through ingenuity, determination, and the refusal to accept that impossible was anything more than a suggestion. Yet, humans themselves paid little heed to accolades. Their focus was on the work at hand, on expanding settlements, exploring deeper, and forging a bond with the moons that went beyond survival. They learned to anticipate storms, harness energy surges, and cultivate life in environments that no other species had dared to inhabit. The Kythera system was no longer a collection of strange anomalies. It was home, laboratory, and canvas. Humans treated the moons with respect and curiosity, collaborating with their natural rhythms to build something greater than mere habitation, a thriving civilization in a place the galaxy had already written off as impossible. The defining moment came when a young child, gazing at the three suns setting over the crystalline peaks of Lyra, turned to her father and asked, "Why did they say we couldn't live here?" Her father, adjusting his helmet and glancing at the shimmering horizon, smiled softly. "Because they've never been human," he said. Those words, simple yet profound, captured the essence of humanity's triumph. Where the galaxy saw rules, humans saw opportunity. Where it saw danger, humans saw challenge. Where it saw impossibility, humans built a home. And in doing so, they left a legacy that would endure for generations, a legacy that reminded the galaxy that the measure of a species is not in what it can do when conditions are favorable, but in how it thrives when conditions are declared impossible. The 18 moons of the Kythera system, once symbols of cosmic paradox, had become monuments of human audacity. The colonies, farms, research stations, and floating cities were more than just structures. They were proof that humanity could bend reality with will, intellect, and courage. The galaxy would speak of these moons for centuries, of humans who lived where physics said they could not, and of a species that redefined the very meaning of survival. And so, in the silent, shimmering expanse of the Cathara system, humans had written a story for the stars themselves, a story of defiance, creativity, and relentless hope. A story that would echo through the galaxy long after the first settlers' footprints faded from the crystalline plains, long after the first bioluminescent farms dimmed, long after the Council's laws were rewritten in the light of a truth that no one could ever deny. Humans would always find a way. The impossible had been conquered not by force, not by knowledge alone, but by the enduring, unyielding spirit of humanity.